Education Minister there warning those who print textbooks outside and smuggle it into the country because that's a local reserve. And we are waiting to see how that warning would be heeded to or otherwise. Government releases 67.9 million cedis to colleges of education. And that has led to conversation about the relevance of the teacher trainee allowance. And of course, that is one of the dominant issues since the start of the week, and we'll be looking at it. But in the meantime, government has come through with 67.9 million and covered the arrears for 2020-2021 academic year, which includes feeding and also the allowance to the trainees. And we'll be looking at that issue extensively on today's edition of Weekly Press Review. What do we have again? That's all for the headlines in the course of the discussion. Or do we have some more papers? Okay, and we'll be looking at some of the headlines in the course of the discussion. Of course, a very packed week we have. So the Ghanaian Times on Wednesday led with a story which involves the Greater Accra Regional Minister, Mr. Henry Korte, where he says landlords, tenants to face prosecution for failing to clean frontage, and it's part of the Clean Your Frontage campaign. The story is fully captured in page 18 of the paper there. Food prices escalates on markets, and that's according to the Ghanaian Times. Of course, we are seeing farming inflation across the globe, and also some domestic, of course, factors that's pushing prices of food and energy high, quite high. Inflation at 19.4%, which means whatever you are earning, you are 19.4% less. And Agbogbloshie redevelopment scheme ready, and that's also according to the Greater Accra Regional Minister there also. And also the economic challenges could affect MPP's chances of winning the 2024 elections, and that story is fully captured in page 13. And that's about the Economic Intelligence Unit's research firm, the Economic Times London-based firm, talking about or making some predictions regarding the Ghanaian economy. We will be interrogating more of what transpired in the course of the week. Of course, the dominant topics. And producer, in the meantime, let's open the conversation. Let me introduce my guest in the studio for today's packed conversation. As and when we'll raise some of the headlines to share with you if we are to discuss it. And on my immediate left is Elikem Kotoko. He's a member, NDC Communication Team. Elikem, thank you so much for your time. And also just after him is Frederick Kofiamia, who is also a member of the MPP Communication Team. We'll later be joined by Peter Ante from the Institute of Education Studies, and also Deputy Public Relations Officer of Ministry of Education, Yao Poku Mensah, will also be joining us on the issue of the teacher trainee allowance, which has also dominated discussions in the course of the week. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Tony.
Yes, it's been a while. And I'm wondering, it's Friday, why Elikem and yourself are in shirts as if we are in braiding.
I think we just missed it today.
Because you guys regularly come on the show with in your African wear and those stuff.
I have constantly had people asking why I don't like wearing jackets. And I just thought that, okay, I found one in
your closet
yesterday, so let me pick it up. And I forgot today was actually Friday. So,
Sonny, the reality is that I've stopped wearing suits. In fact, I used to love it. Even back where it's very cold, I wear my African wear. I don't know today, because I will be doing some few errands. I really did not plan into what I will wear today. But forgive me, next week, if I happen to be here, you see me in my African.
Okay, thank you so much, gentlemen, for it. Let's quickly zoom into the conversation, because government on Tuesday, let's start with the, I'd like to start today's discussion with the issue about the teacher training, which has dominated discussion in the course of the week. Or let's start rather with the neutrality allowance, because it's quite new. We are hearing it for the first time, although the deal was signed in January this year. We are hearing it because the members of the Civil and Local Government Staff Association are unhappy because of the delay in payment of that, and they are threatening to embark on strike. The threat started on somewhere April 5, and true to their words, and on Thursday they embarked on a strike over non-payment of their neutrality allowance. The association, in a statement, said the neutrality allowance formed part of a memorandum of understanding entered into with the government in January. The allowance, we understand, is to reinforce the group's commitment to be neutral in their discharge of their duties as civil servants. As part of the deal, civil servants will be paid 20% of their basic salary each month as the allowance. Quite controversial, because the Constitution already enjoins civil servants to work in a non-partisan manner. In the discharge of their duties, they should be apolitical. So why the need for government to go into such a deal with civil servants? We try to interrogate the matter as CLOSAG and the National Labour Commission, together with the Employment Ministry, are in a meeting to resolve this impasse, which has led to them laying down their tools. Let me start with you, Fred, on this one, because you speak for the government. The question since yesterday has been, why pay 20% basic salary to civil servants as neutrality allowance, when already in their conditions or in their terms of reference, they know they have to be apolitical in the discharge of their mandate?
Good morning, Sandy. Good morning, Kotoko, and to your cherished viewers as well. First of all, I do not have the full fact as to what went into the determination of this neutrality allowance. But having established that, let me also put it out there. Personally, I have a principle that once there is an agreement between an employer and employee, no matter what, it must be fulfilled, and that agreement must be satisfied at any point in time. But when we are dealing with the crust of the issue, which is the neutrality allowance, it begs the question and the belief that why would government or even CLOSAG go into such an agreement, when, for me, it's a bit weird from where I sit, because one, I don't believe in any neutrality when it comes to our political ecosystem or even our governance structure. There's no neutrality. We are all political animals. At the end of the day, when you go to the polls, you would have to choose one political party.
Well, in the discharge of your duty is different.
I was getting there. So when you say that, you know, you'd take money from the consolidated funds because you don't have to be partisan or political, I don't see the fine line between that. However, I am of the opinion, just like you alluded to, you must be extremely professional. You see, we are having this discussion, and this came about as a result because there certainly is a school of thought that made the case, or that advanced the case for why there's a need for them to receive such a neutrality allowance, because it assumes that if you are political, you will not be able to be professional. If you are political or partisanly political, you will not be able to discharge your duties professionally. And that I strongly disagree. You can be partisan and at the same time be professional. But we are here as a result of the demonization of the political ecosystem. We are here because of the bastardization of the political ecosystem. We've created a monster out of politics, which for me is a platform for you to do bigger things. Individually, you can do this much, but when you have the political platform, you can do this, you know, much. We are gagging them against doing partisan politics because of the potential unprofessionalism that will be, exuded when they are in their respective position. That is what I disagree, because I have known people who hold political positions are in the public service and are doing their job fantastically. In fact, sometimes in the discharge of your duties, you have even your own friends from the other political side who will come to you, Kofi, can you assist me acquire visa for this person or that person? I recall when we were doing the evacuation of Ghanaians, stranded Ghanaians during the COVID lockdown, and we were to more or less mobilize Ghanaians who are stranded in the US. I had calls from my friends from the other side of the aisle who were calling, I need assistance, can you direct me as to what to do and all of that. So for me, it's the professionalism that matters. And again, when you look at chapter 14 of the Constitution, it talks about the public service and those who fall under the public service. Under these circumstances, I don't think CLOSAC should be making such demands. Clearly, if the public even hears what they are asking for, it's marks of some form of, what are you guys doing in this, crunching moment, in these challenging moments where everybody is suffering? And if you want to ask for something to be able to do your work effectively, is it what you are going to ask for? Why would you ask for these things even at this particular time? Should it even be public? I believe that it's something they should shelve it as soon as possible. I am glad that the Labour Commission has engaged them, and I also believe they've suspended their strike.
Even before I throw in my follow-up question to you, I must share with the audience that we've tried getting CLOSAC to be part of the conversation. They have declined commenting on the issue as they are in a meeting or in negotiations with the Labour Commission and, of course, the Employment Ministry. But, Fred, the question also to the government is that why will government in the first place agree to be in such a deal, sign such a memorandum of understanding because this was just in January. And this was January where we were still battling as we are being told, the effect of COVID-19. When we are not having access to the international capital market as a result of our fiscal challenges. When we are asking citizens to pay e-levy because we need to ramp up revenue. Yet we go in such a deal to give what appears to be handouts, which has no basis.
Sani, I'm not fully clothed with the argument that went into the determination of this agreement. So I'm very careful as to what to put out. That's why I started this conversation by saying that my personal opinion, if I was the government, I wouldn't go into this. I mean, let's the reality go with what is happening. At the end of the day, of course, there's nothing like neutrality in our system. Secondly, even their own acts and laws, bars them from getting themselves actively involved in politics. But that notwithstanding, like I said, even if the agreement had been reached and they are making such a demand, it's something that should not warrant a strike, because the moment you go on a strike, you bring on board the public. And when the public hears it, for example, now, if not for the strike, you wouldn't have known that there was such even an agreement. So the bottom line is that once you do that, then it means that those who fall under the public service, which includes themselves, the audit service, the judiciary service, the prisons, the police, the military, and everybody is coming to demand a pound of the flesh. I don't think it would augur well. I will plead at this point with CLOSAC to go back and Georgia, so that this thing will get out of the system as soon as possible, because it's not one that the public wants to hear, even at this point. You want to be neutral when we all know there are civil servants who hold political positions while they are civil servants. And there are civil servants who do engage in partisan politics and all that. I mean, let's pause here and let's continue to do the boardroom discussion, so that at the end of the day we will come to an amicable solution moving forward.
Now, I'll come back to you. Let me bring in Elikem. Elikem, you've heard him admitting that he thinks with the scanty details that he has about this whole deal, it shouldn't be in place in the first place.
Yes, Sani, good morning once again. And allow me to specially greet one Stephen Kwabena Ato, popularly called Ask, and then Isifu Kudus Badese. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know the right words to use. And my first question, just to seek clarity, is that in which year was this? When was this signed?
In January.
Just of this year.
Yes.
To be very frank with you, an employee would wish that he or she is given the heavens. And so given the leverage would make all the demands, but it's up to you, the employer, to actually sit and negotiate, and must always make sure that it is a win-win situation. And I am just wondering who are the very people who sat in the said meeting sane enough, having at the back of their minds the fact that we're battling with COVID-19 and in an economic downturn of affairs, and would agree to such demand. At best, I am sure that the employees or CLOCSAC could be demanding for maybe a pay rise in a different form. But neutrality, I am sure if we condone this, then tomorrow we may have another also say they want objectivity allowance. Others may also say they want vulnerability allowance. Somebody may say, and you know, because for instance,
no, do you know we have vulnerability allowance?
Yes, you get it. Some are even justified when you have maybe physically challenged people in certain facilities where they are challenged.
Especially those who are exposed to equipment, also radiation, and those stuff. They have some sort of allowance.
Yeah, we classify them as in class A or B or C, you know. But to come to the understanding that in order for you to be neutral, you should be paid for it. That is more or less even a bribe in itself. Because if you don't bribe me, then I am not going to be neutral. And before you are actually employed, you are told that where you are working, the job ethics requires of you to remain neutral. Do you accept it? Yes. You accept and move in only now to be turning around. But I'm sincerely not faulting CLOCSAG at all. Because given the opportunity, if GBC sits you down now to ask how much do you want to be paid from tomorrow, you maybe ask them, do they have the capacity to pay you from even a year before you were employed, so that you will be more comfortable. You make all weird demands. So they are right to actually make all demands. But the very sane humans who were able to actually go through this unthinkable process of allowing it to go through are the very people we must subject to scrutiny and shame for allowing this to go through. We cannot blame CLOCSAG at all. And for their decision to even not want to comment is justifiable because it is in their interest. They do not wish to comment. We must find out who sat in that meeting and agreed on this. Let us face facts. This cannot be the continued definition of what we call competency in leadership that is being displayed under the present dispensation. It is very worrying that we know of the economic downturn things are taken. The fact that we can even complain easily about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The fact that we can complain that things are taking a downturn because of COVID-19. Meanwhile, we've taken all manner of funds, etc. But do not see the wisdom in getting people who will take decisions in the best interest of the country at this particular moment, when maybe we can consider that in the next decade or two when it becomes very...
So let me share this with you. I was listening to the Deputy Employment Minister yesterday and on private station Joy FM, where he said, explaining or justifying the neutrality allowance. He said, and I quote, "For them, they make a case that they cannot attend any political program, therefore do not engage or do not get anything from the political landscape, and then they are committed to staying neutral and will not get any form of allowance or whatever. They are deprived of those things, and therefore government must help them to stay neutral." So that allowance is what they have put forward, and we have agreed that we have to look at this, but it is not firmly agreed on the name to give to it, but this is the rationale. So the minister has confirmed they will pay, but as to whether it will be called neutrality allowance, they are yet to determine, even though if you look at the concept is neutrality allowance they're asking for.
I am sorry, but that is the height of insanity coming from even the sector minister. The fact of this matter is that we know that our judges, for instance, are supposed to be neutral. Do we pay them for that? Mm-hmm. And the fact that you have to ask somebody to be neutral, it's even bias in itself. It even tells you that when we have government appointees coming to tell us that this is in the interest of Ghana, probably they are not being neutral. They are not being factual to us. It is with a certain parochial interest. So to even have the minister back that, it tells you the angle from which they arrived at that decision. and it is very sorry to say. I am not against ClockSAG for this decision. Like I said, every employee will want the best of things. You would even wish everybody is given a car, given a good home, everything. So they would make their demands. But is it logic that at this point in time, when the regime has become an all-round underperforming regime, that a sector minister would now want to even defend this to make justification for this? I don't think so. Like I was saying, if we're not careful, very soon we'll have some people also tell us that we want to take weak gender allowance. We want to take minus allowances. And then all manner of nonsense will crop in, which will not be good for us.
Do you think we should, if that's the argument you're making, we should then allow them to participate actively in the political process if their conscience or the ethics of the work will tell them, once you are within the workspace, don't...
The point is that you don't get employed before you are told what you're not to do. Before you are employed, you are told that you are supposed to remain neutral.
Does that mean
and that is why you are accepted?
If the terms of reference is not favorable, once you have accepted the job, you cannot seek for a review or maybe seek for better conditions?
Well, then I think that is the reason, another subject of debate that they must submit to the wider stakeholders, but not just a few going into maybe a tripartite committee and then agreeing that let it be so. Because, see, when you take this matter, I just don't get it, because, hey, the person who is supposed to be neutral actually also votes anyways, and we know that. All we are saying is that try to shelve that in the discharge of your duties. It is the reason why it is worrying both you and myself that of recent times our Supreme Court image has been dented to the lowest ebb, where to every person that tries to talk, they're like, it's about the Supreme Court, it's about judiciary. It is not good for us to have even the National Security Minister pass a comment that suggested that it appears judgments were in a skewed manner. You get my point?
He explained.
Let me come in.
He explained that he was taken out of context in that conversation.
Of course.
And we've all heard the...
I know that is not a subject of discussion, but let's face the fact. Must it always be the case that any time the MPP speaks, we need further clarification of the same language?
But we have people like you who put a spin to it.
There is no spin to it.
We have people like you who do propaganda out of it.
Let me come in here.
Who take political capital out of it. For instance, allowing him.
I'll give you the fact. I'll give you the time to also talk.
If, for instance, I just say that when you are passing judgments that are skewed or look like lopsided in favor of one party, it is a threat to national security. How well is that taken out of context? You've not spoken gibberish, you've not spoken Russian, you've not spoken French, English that we all went to same school to learn. So if there's a bashing afterwards for which one feels that there's need for damage or image redemption or damage control, that's no subject of matter. So let's not wade into that.
Okay.
But I am
when
only
you get
saying,
the time, you can respond to it.
I am only saying that I would not fault ClockSAG on this. Their terms of reference is given you when you are employed. If ClockSAG as a whole feels that we want to partake in politics openly and publicly, they should come up with that and then say, okay, no, because of this and that, you can do that. But you cannot be in and then now be asking that, if you want me to remain neutral, then pay me. It is more or less like seeking a bribe. That bribe me or else I'll show my political colors. And I don't think that is fair.
I'll come back to you. Fred, you earlier said you were not aware of the details that went into approving the neutrality allowance. And I'm sharing with you what the minister said, as he said. So that is what government considered in approving or entering into that deal with ClockSAG. And do you think it's justified? You are with the MPP. The MPP is in government?
I've made my position known on that. But that notwithstanding, if we will go into the issue and commentary such as what came out of Elikem in response to this particular topic, I don't think it's fair. I mean, he's entitled to his comments. However, if you are not careful and we decide to go into every allowance that is paid to the public servant or a worker in this country, you'll be marveled some of the things that you hear. I believe that it's the name and the objective that personally, Kofi, think it needs to be reviewed. Probably they want a way of increasing their salary and they are trying to find a loophole in the system, an avenue in the system where they can advance an argument for an increase in theirs. Because basically, whatever allowance you give them, it goes to uptake their salary. But as I sit here, the objective, the goal, the name doesn't sit well with me. Like I said, the argument made by CLOSAC and the agreements with governments can be debated. When you read the response of the Deputy Minister, Honorable Rekon, you would realize that it's not really firmed up yet. There are still discussions, but government has agreed in principle that we will look into it. Now it's a matter of public discussion, and we are all trying to talk about it. I believe there have been many policies or programs that government or a group of persons have intended to roll out. And based on public discussion, it has been shelved. And this can be one of them, okay, at the end of the day. And now, you see, when we go into some of these things, and that dovetails into the National Securities Minister, let's be very careful. This is he's a man I've met before and I've engaged, and he's extremely careful not to subject that particular ministry to partisan politics and partisan commentary, because he believes in the ideology of the late Kojo Chikata, that when it comes to national security, as much as possible, you alienate yourself. But I made a point that when you have a political party which thrives on propaganda and mischief, and having heard some of these comments, they will of course take you out of context. I don't know how many times you want us to put, want the system to explain, but they will come back, try to put a spin to it, because it inures to their political benefit. And I think we should move away.
I'll come back to you, gentlemen. Let's get onto the phone lines. We've been joined by Franklin Kujo, who is the president for Imani Africa. Mr. Kujo, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Good morning, my friend.
I heard you on a private radio station where you said the neutrality allowance does not make much sense because the Constitution already enjoins civil servants to be non-partisan in the discharge of their mandates. And if you listen to the Deputy Minister yesterday, he was justifying the neutrality allowance by saying that the request from CLOSAG was that they are not allowed to actively participate in the political process, and they do not get dividend from the political activities and opportunities in the country, hence the request for that allowance. Does it make sense to you?
Well, in fact, the word I used was fraudulent. Is that feedback? Is that feedback in my?
We'll work on that, but continue with your submission, please.
All right. Well, as I was saying, the word I used was actually fraudulent. The fraudulent arrangement, on the simple basis that the principles that undergird the civil service are three. There's the issue of permanency, anonymity, and neutrality. Obviously, the first two means that their conditions of service cannot be varied to their dislike. You can't just wake up at political activity and sack a civil servant. The best you can do is transfer him. The issue around anonymity also means that if they give advice, if they offer advice to political heads, they are not responsible for the consequences. And of course, the third one, which has become the subject of contention, is neutrality. The idea is to have a loyalty, blind loyalty to party or to the political authority at any point in time. So how anybody would construe that the issue of neutrality is so important of all the three that they must be used as a basis for discussing and negotiating some additional remuneration or joining the service is quite frankly fraudulent. Because the basis for entering into the civil service is because you want to abide by this. It's not everybody who gets the opportunity to have a permanent job, right? So you know what you're getting into, and you're right. The Constitution already enjoins you to be apolitical anyway. So whoever dreamt about this and whoever decided to even sit and negotiate this must be held responsible. The Deputy Minister's rationale obviously it doesn't make sense. I mean, to suggest that because political actors enjoy certain privileges, so those who serve them must also enjoy the privileges. In fact, if you want to have a conversation about remuneration generally for the public service, let's do so. But let's not conflate the issues. The other point I need to make quickly is that we had gotten into this uncharted waters simply because of the single spine salary mechanism that was also introduced at some point in time. You know, when this was introduced, we had cause to say at Imani that that particular principle itself defies productivity, because what it meant was that if I had a degree and all I do is to water gardens at the Kumasi Parks and Gardens, and you have a degree and have to think hard before you organize or host a show, we should be paid the same. I think it's wrong in labor economics. It wasn't long after we decided to introduce Rex Premium to somehow cater for those whose jobs were more were more arduous and more critical. And so there was a genesis to this, by the way, but I think this particular one is an outlier, and quite frankly, is ludicrous, really. I'm happy that the Ghanaian populace is entirely against.
You hinted that the policy, obviously, according to you and many others who have opposed it, doesn't make sense. And the appetite of members of CLOSAG has already been whetted, and they expect this to be paid. You're asking for it to be cancelled, if I get you right, and they are already on a strike because of the delay in payment of the allowance. How should this be resolved?
Well, I think government has just one option. It's not, having heard most of what Ghanaians are saying, is to say that, look, we were probably wrong in thinking about this whole thing. We are not able to pay. That's all. I think the basis of this allowance it cannot just be justified. And I've heard the CLOSAG chairman also, I think the union boss suggests that it's a contractual arrangement. I mean, imagine every member of the civil service decides to ask for one of the allowance or the other. They're just opening the Pandora's box. So the government should say that, look, now that this has come to light, like they say, we were the ones who said it. We are the same person saying we didn't say it. I'm just translating literally the chief proverb that
well, yesterday I had Isaac Bampo, I think out of a meeting. I watched a video where he was asked about some of the utterances you've made regarding the allowance, and they seem quite unhappy that you're calling for it to be scrapped. I don't know if it has come to your notice and what you may want to say about it quickly.
I've seen it, and it was quite fanciful listening. But you know, the challenge really for them now is that I'm sure many people, if you open the phone lines, and I don't know the discussion that had gone on in the studio, but many people across the country, some of the media have monitored, are totally in angst and against it. So it is not what I did. Maybe I have a bigger voice, but they have a lot more angrier voices to deal with. You know, because if CLOSAG gets it, then every member of the civil service community would be entitled to it. If I use sitting there, would now start asking for air allowance.
Mr. Kujo, thank you so much for your time this morning. Franklin Kujo is the president, Imani Africa, and has been sharing his view and the view of Imani on the proposed neutrality allowance, which has led to CLOSAG embarking on a strike. We will extend or expand the conversation because we have on the line the Executive Secretary, National Labour Commission, Mr. Ofosu Asamoah, to also help us appreciate how the NLC is resolving this impasse. Thank you so much for your time, sir, this morning.
Thank you.
First of all, if you can share with us how far the conversation in trying to get closer to return to posts amidst negotiations in determining or getting the employer to pay what it has promised the employee?
Yes, at the moment, you know, we had the notice of the intended strike. We invited CROSAC and the government side to see how best we could halt the strike, especially having in view what agreement they had arrived on earlier, which the government doesn't seem to have fulfilled the side of it. So present was the Fair Wages, the Ministry of Employment, and others, but the scheduled officer from Finance, which was the Deputy Minister, could not be available, and the Minister was out of town. So another meeting was scheduled for them to meet with the Ministry of Finance and sort out that portion. So there was a series of meetings, climaxing yesterday. 3 days ago, they spent the whole day up to 1 o'clock, broke off, came back at 3 o'clock to the night. And yesterday too, they held a meeting throughout the day, and we are reliably informed that they are almost arrived at an agreement. So they are calling off the strike. They were not supposed to have gone on strike anyway. But I think when we checked from the leadership, they said they are not sanctioned with this strike. But because of the notices that had gone on earlier, some of their members, went on strike yesterday, and today I hear some of them are still on strike, though others have reported. But barring any eventuality, the strike ends today formally, and then on Monday they will be in office.
Mr. Samoa, I want to know even though the Labour Commission is a mediator in this whole process, yes. And I want to know if you are urging the employer to honor its promise to the employee.
Yes. Yes, that is what Labour Commission is there to do. You have gone into an agreement with them. Both parties have signed. So if one party has performed the side of the contract by dutifully discharging it, the other side, which is government in this instance, must also do its part. That is why we urge them. That's why we call on the finance minister to meet them, either to discharge his part or tell them when it is going to discharge it. The two of them must come to an agreement and do arrangement for the discharge of the parties' duties under the contract. That is it. We cannot alter it unless it is against the law, whatever they agreed on. Contravenes the laws of Ghana. But if the two parties agree on their own, that this is what is going to bind us in our contractual relation, and the two of them, we only seek to enforce it, give them into it. So that is what was done.
Okay. Kindly help us with some education here. There have been calls for this allowance to be withdrawn. In fact, we're just speaking with Imani Africa, which has been speaking in that regard. And I was wondering if there is any legal basis or window for government to consider taking such a move if the calls for the scrapping of the allowance intensify. And wouldn't be violating any labor rules.
If there is an employer and an employee who have come together to collectively agree after a bargain or negotiation that I am demanding this and this is the other party, this is what I can give to you. So if they want to scrap it, it's for the two parties to agree on to scrap it. Or if there's a third party who is an interested party like Imani is proposing, if they find that it is illegal and it is against the law, then they can go to court, or they can pressurize one of the party or both parties to have the agreement cancelled. We as Labour Commission has no role to play in scrapping of this thing. Whatever they have agreed on, no, I don't think so.
Thank you so much.
The two of them can agree on it. If there is a third party interested who wants it to be scrapped, we can approach the court, urge the parties to scrap it, or approach the court to make a pronouncement on it. But Labour Commission will have nothing to do at this time.
Thank you so much for speaking with us this morning. Ofosu Asamoah is the Executive Secretary, National Labour Commission, and has been helping us to appreciate the conversation so far. I must announce that we tried getting CLOSAC to be part of the conversation to get their side of the story, but they have declined commenting on the issue as they are in negotiation with government and other parties. We'll continue with the conversation right after this break. Stay with us, don't go away. Thank you so much for staying with us. Let's zoom into another issue that dominated discussions in the course of the week. Because government on Tuesday released 67.9 million Ghana cedis to cater for the feeding and running of colleges of education in Ghana. This came after concerns by the National Conference of Principals of Colleges of Education, but that's the schools were struggling to feed teacher trainees in the 46 colleges as funds for that had been in arrears for over 6 months. The group had hinted that students might have to pay for their feeding themselves in the coming days if the government did not intervene with some payment to enable them service debts on the part of suppliers. And in a swift response, the Education Minister on Tuesday confirmed that some funds had been released to the colleges, and that will cater for arrears for the 2020-2021 academic year. And as it stands now, that has been cleared. We don't have confirmation whether the funds have hit the account of the colleges and other respective stakeholders. But if you look at the crux of the matter, this has led to conversations about the need for the trainee allowance itself. Of course, it has been in existence for decades. In 2015, the Mahama-led administration cancelled it and came in with an allowance scheme to substitute that. The MPP campaigned massively on the back of that, and true to their words when they got elected in 2017, it was part of the early policies that they introduced. And it is having a toll on the public purse and has led to conversations about whether we should maintain the trainee allowance. Because if you look at it, coupled with the feeding fee from 2017, the budgetary allocation was around 105 million Ghana cedis. It went up to 177, 169 in 2020, 169 again in 2021, and 241 million Ghana cedis in 2020. Of course, the release of the funds is good news to the trainees and the colleges, but some stakeholders aren't happy with that and are calling for it to be scrapped. Let me start with you, Elikem, on this one. The trainees have been advancing a lot of arguments in defense of the allowance, that it helps them to sustain themselves in school. And on the side of the government also, we are learning that it enables government to bond them, to post them to the remotest part of the country in an attempt to ensure equity in the distribution of teachers nationwide. And I was thinking that makes sense.
Thank you so much, Sunny. But I don't think you would agree that necessarily it is feeding a trainee that would actually bond that trainee to allow himself or herself to be posted to a remote area. I mean, I don't think so. In the first place, you see, I think when we politicize every issue, these are some of the challenges we are confronted with in the end. If you recall, like you rightly said, under the erstwhile John Dramani Mahama-led NDC administration, we thought through the process and felt that, okay, there was need to upgrade these colleges, all the 46, to tertiary status. That when we now grant them that tertiary status, it meant that they are now able to also rather assess the student's loan rather than the allowances that was given them. And mind you, one major reason why government thought it's wise to do so was because there was the high demand for more trainees or more teachers. But because government could not provide the allowances for the people and the trainees, and could only provide for a certain limited number, it could not open the windows or the doors in order to recruit more. Therefore, there was a need to allow for opening the doors or the windows to recruit more, to call for a cessation of the allowances and rather migrate them onto the student's loan. And don't forget, because they have even gained tertiary status, and therefore they must also be treated as tertiary students. That was the rationale behind President John Dramani Mahama's initiative. And if you recall why he was even building the 200 community day SHSs with 123 at various levels. Now, at a point, it became a political tool for others who felt that, let's tell them, no, we will restore the allowance, we will do that, forgetting that you were not in government and you could not even tell, but you could have asked to know why government was taking that decision. It was in the interest of the same public purse, which you in opposition was saying that you want to protect. The public purse ought to be protected well and not to be dissipated anyhow. And this is a win-win situation. Hey, we're giving you tertiary status. We're not taking the allowance completely. We are still saying there's an avenue to still take some fund, which you can even still pay back so that your other generations can also take over, can also join in. And then if, for instance, government was taking maybe 1,000 students every year, you could now open up for even 5,000. That was it. Simple as that. As we speak, 7 months into, for 7 months now, teacher trainees allowances have not even been paid because government is struggling.
That was what the money released will cover that.
No, is it to cover that as well? Because I'm told the feeding as well. And you see, one major concern I have is that this is Ghana. Not until we see a proper pay advice, I will not even believe the figure. Because even if they are giving 30 million, no single head of any institution will dare come out and say that we're not giving the exact amount. You'll be dealt with according to the regime. And that is one fact everybody, including you and those watching myself, no.
That's your perception.
No, that is just the truth. Look, let me tell you, I spent time going back to my old school. I went to 2 schools, so I will not mention which particular one in order for any victimization, etc. I spent time there with a friend. And if you imagine some of the things I was told, that even, for instance, on the school feeding, to just, let me take Western Region, to take Tom Brown to the schools for feeding, even this is the secondary schools. It had to take somebody all the way from Kumasi that there's a directive that this person should come and just supply. You can't say anything. And so I am telling you that, well, you can question it and want to always say it's propaganda and spin. People watching know the facts. That no single head of any institution will dare come out and say, hey, the 67 million is not true, it's only 50 or it's 40. No. So let us see concrete evidence. Why must government be reactionary anyways? Why do you have to even wait until there's cry for that before you act? Is that the new definition of the competence that Ghanaians were promised? And so I am at sea. Don't forget, I think yesterday I was listening to one of them that were talking about the fact that even on the 46 colleges of education, all projects have actually stalled. They mentioned 5 projects in, is it Golu, or I've forgotten the name, in the northern, where all projects since 2017 have actually stalled because there has not been they've not touched it to do anything on it. So, you see, at one breath, government wants us to sympathize with them that, look, times are hard, things are not moving on well, which we should understand because Russia has invaded Ukraine suddenly, and then COVID-19 actually imposed so much economic burden on us. Then at another point, the same people are acting contrary to the perception we are supposed to hold dear to our heart. So, you see, today, that is the challenge they find themselves in because there isn't enough money to keep doing so. So the problem now is that even if you actually will have to now be admitting 5,000 students, for instance, you are constrained. You may have to limit that to maybe 1,000 or 1,500. I'm just using figures not to mean the specifics. But that was the rationale that informed the erstwhile John Mahama-led NDC regime to think through vision and say that, look, if there's need for more schools and we are beginning to build schools, we are building hospitals, then let's begin to open the gates in order to allow for us to train more nurses. As we speak today, University of Ghana Medical Center is fully functional. Minimum of 1,500 people are gainfully employed. And they can even shout and say that we have employed nurses. The facility has been put in place in order to employ human beings, not animals. So you must give even commendation for the visionary leadership that was given by those who thought that in the near future there will be need for all of this.
I'll come back to you, Elkem. Fred, the conversation about sustaining or retaining the trainee allowance has become quite topical. And you heard the argument he is advancing. You've heard several also from others since this issue came up. Do you think we should still be paying the teacher training allowance, looking at the revenue constraints, looking at the fact that there is Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which is taking a toll on our economy. COVID-19, we are still battling the ravages of the global health crisis.
First of all, Sani, let's admit that there's no government policy or program that is cast in stone. It can be reviewed at any point in time. But having listened to the argument advanced by Elkem, which is a representation of what the NDC is, and of course, the decision they took in 2015 by cancelling these allowances. When we were in opposition and when we came to power, we believe that the factors demand that we continue to pay these allowances.
And what were those factors?
And just so you know, when you read the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, 1992, Chapter 1, Article 1, Clause 1, it says the sovereignty of Ghana resides in the people of Ghana, in whose name and in whose welfare the powers of government are to be exercised in the manner within the limits laid down in this Constitution. So the objective of every government is to ensure, in fact, when you read further the directive principles of state policies, Article 34, it tells you the government must take all necessary, or the state must take all necessary steps to ensure that it maximizes the well-being and welfare of every Ghanaian. So when you are in government, or you are a government, you need to appreciate the need for certain policies, not for the sake of it. And you and I know the background for the cancellation of the trainee allowances was as a result of the bailout we went for with the Bretton Woods institution. And that warranted and demanded that certain public expenditures must be reduced, which included the trainee allowances and even a freeze on the public sector employment. But when we came to power, we realized, and I recall at the time when the senior minister was being vetted, he made the point that if you are a government and you are economically prudent and you have the wherewithal, you can be able to create the physical space in order to be able to support and cushion these young people or these individuals who are into the teacher training, schools and colleges as well. But things have changed. In fact, when you read the budget statement, paragraph 4, we as a government admitted that as a result of the COVID, then even the Ukraine and Russia war had not, happened. So we admitted that the COVID has exposed certain fundamental issues, weaknesses. We use even the word weaknesses in our social life, in our economic life. So the issue right now is moving forward. As a government, do we, or any government for that matter, and I believe that the MPP government will be the government of the nation. You understand that? So moving forward, do we continue to make provision for these allowances, looking at how at any point in time we can have a global pandemic that can disrupt our budgetary lines, our expenditure and all of that, and might cascade into some form of hardship and all of that. So it's an argument we can have moving forward. Now the issue really is that I think they are giving about 400 cedis. Do we still continue to give them 400 cedis? Is it enough? 200
into feeding, 200
yes.
directs.
So for me, as I sit here again, individually, I think it has to be reviewed. Whether they should be brought onto the loan scheme so that they will take loan, and then when they start working, they will pay for it. And somehow they've been upgraded into tertiary or some sort of thing. So that means that they are now part of the
and I read a post on Facebook that says in an attempt to bridge the teacher inequality gap, now that they have been upgraded, we are rather deepening inequality when we are not paying other students.
We should not be insensitive as to the big elephant in the room. Why people choose to go into training colleges. We should not avoid that. It's a discussion that when you bring it to the fore, people try to put a spin to it as though you are trying to downgrade, or more or less malign
and I think
profession. So for me, I want to go deeper than this. I mean, we've come to a point in the life of this country where we appear to, I call it, we have a nanny state. A nanny in the sense that this government appears to take care of us right from even before we are born until we die. Okay? Right from when we are unborn. For example, we have the free maternal health. That when a woman gets pregnant, government takes care of the woman, and even postnatal. And then you go to the basic schools, school feeding is there, it's free. Even up to the university level, education is almost free. So this is a government, this is a country that provides for everything at every stage in our life. When you go to the advanced countries, that's not how it happens. For example, to the extent that it's government that pays doctors in this country, it's government that pays teachers in this country. For me, how long can we sustain this?
I'll come back with some questions with the argument you are raising about why people opt for colleges of education, because I know in the past they were not at par with the universities, and then that was you go there and end up going for
the
first
economic
degree.
situation.
But now it has changed.
It's the economic situation.
It has changed. Teaching has become more or less. I don't want to use lucrative, but let's go on to the phone lines and speak with Yao Poku Mensah, who is deputy spokesperson for the education ministry. Yeah, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, looking at the current economic situation and the investments that has been going on into the teacher training allowance and the many arguments that people have advanced in support and opposition to this policy, what is the Education Ministry doing? Is it considering to scrap it, or this policy will be sustained?
Let me say good morning to yourself and to my co-panel members in the studio, to the general public, and special greetings to my teachers. Wherever you see it from, any angle that you take the issue from, at the end of the day, there is a certain quality assurance thing that you need to do. What we need to understand is that one, the understanding of teacher education, do we need the teachers in the system? Yes, we do need them in the system. And how then do we do it? Do we go the same way that we are implementing? Or how then do we do it? And government is the view that teacher education is very essential towards the socio-economic development of this country. And when we talk of quality education, you need that quality teacher to be in the classroom to help out. And people do not opt for teacher training just for the sake of seeking education. You go in there with a certain purpose, and government recruits these trainee teachers with the understanding that they come to serve within a certain time frame. So that is the understanding, and that is where we need to take it from. And they are seen as partial government workers. For example, if you look at the days where allowances were paid from controller straight away, where trainees had, what do we call it, staff ID, that understanding was clear until the allowance was removed. So as it stands, the status quo still remains, that we feel we need to motivate people to take up the profession, especially enrolling in our colleges of education. And again, we feel that teachers play a pivotal role in our education system. And if we want to move to where the advanced countries have gone to, then we need to be mindful of the kind of people we train and the motivation we give them out there. So the policy hasn't changed. The policy still remains. Government is still committed in giving out these allowances to our teacher trainees. I will continue to do that until government decides to review otherwise, either to increase or whatever. And that will be for policymakers to sit around the table and look at the current trend and whether to see if we can upward it or we need to move within a certain direction.
Anytime the question about scrapping the allowance comes up, the argument has been that governments want to ensure equity in the distribution of teachers between the rural and urban communities. And if we look at your own data, it appears for more than 2 decades of running this scheme with the objective of bridging the gap, we still have shortages of teachers in the deprived communities and an overpopulation of teachers in urban areas, for example. And that defeats the objective of continuing to pay the allowance to the teachers, trainees, I mean.
That is not the case. In any angle that you look at it, the government wouldn't be recruiting every year. That government wouldn't be recruiting teachers into the system every year. Just this year, 16,850 have been added on to the teacher recruitment. So any angle that you look at it from, we still need the teachers. And whatever statistics, I don't know the statistics that you have in front of you.
These numbers are from your own ministry.
Yeah, and I haven't seen it. That is in your hands. I haven't seen the document that you are holding. But that is why I say that anywhere that you look at it from, and even if we are to go by the data that you have provided, then it means that government shouldn't even be employing teachers again. We do have enough in the system. But just this is 16,850. So it tells you that we still need them. And day in and day out, new schools come up. So how then do we fill in these classrooms? So the policy in here, just one you stated, bridging that gap, and again, getting the quality brains to be in the system as a form of motivation. And immediately people enter into that system, what it means is that they are seen as partial government workers. So how then do we treat them? The question is, how then do we treat them? Do we treat them as their colleagues in the university, or how then do we do it? And government, we are of the view that once they are in the system, accepted to be in our training colleges and accepting posting into where their services are needed, then we should be mindful as to how we treat them. And the policy, as I indicated, still remains.
Well, I disagree with you on that one, but if you look at the objective again of ensuring that the rural communities have adequate teachers to help with education in those areas, why don't we transform this policy into, let's say, an incentive for rural teaching? So those who want to go...
what you are referring to is post-training college. Post-training college. Before one gets onto that platform, you need to start from a base, and the base is the training college. And that's
according to your own explanations, the payment of the allowance enables government to bond teachers. So when government posts you to, let's say, Bunkrugu Yoyo, because you have been taking the allowance, you are obliged to accept that posting to go and serve there. And I'll say, instead of that wholesome policy where if you are in Bunkrugu, you receive it. If you are in Accra as a trainee, whether you be posted in Accra or in the remotest part of the country, you still receive the allowance. Why don't we make it into an incentive for those who go to the rural areas so that it encourages people to go there?
But nobody knows where he or she will be posted. You can only know that after your training and you've fulfilled all the requirements. So if I school in, let's say, Kumasi, Wesco, for example, the fact that I'm in Wesco does not mean that I'll be kept in Kumasi. And the service is where your service is needed. So where will the Ghana Education Service need my service to perform my duty as a teacher? And that is that is in the sole prerogative of the Ghana Education Service. But within its build-up, the understanding that we need to get is from the base. The base strong enough, getting quality-wise, then that is transferred into the profession itself. So the argument, because I went to training college, and I know what the experience is and how beneficial these allowances have been to students. So once one...
You think the allowance will not be beneficial to students of UDS who are studying other courses?
Come again?
I'm asking if you think the allowance will also not be beneficial to other tertiary students now that the colleges are at par with.
I chose to be in a training college. It's a matter of choice. So if I choose to be in a training college, that is what I get, and that is what government is offering me for my service into anywhere that government deems fit to post me. So it has been with us, and it's not just within this year or two that is coming. So that has been how the structure operates, and I think and I strongly believe that the allowance should be maintained, and if possible, even if be increased to accommodate students for them to do better, and that is my position.
Quite interesting.
Position, though.
Yes, on this platform, we may want to take your position as the position of the ministry, even though you're clear, because you're speaking for the education ministry.
Once the policy has changed, and once there is no review of that, and that is what we stand for.
Well, very finally, if it's very clear that there is an infrastructural gap in the colleges of education, because you're currently running double track in the schools, which also leads to the question of what we are doing to improve on infrastructure so that this double track system can be withdrawn. And there are indications that since 2017, the project in the various schools have not received any sort of funding to be completed. And I was wondering, between giving handouts to students for feeding and expanding the infrastructure to take in more trainees and produce more teachers? Which one would you go for personally?
I'm not quite sure about the stagnation in infrastructure development in our colleges. And I can inform you on authority that government is moving in to provide a 3-story hostel facilities for our training colleges as well.
It's moving in, right? You said it's moving in, right?
Yes, the preparatory grants have already been done, and we are almost through with its implementation. That is for that aspect. And that is why I said I'm not quite sure about where the stop in infrastructure development that you refer to. And again, per the understanding of double track, I don't know I don't know what you're describing as a double track in our training colleges, but generally, if you look at our training college system in Ghana, every school has got its general intake and the number of students that can be accommodated in the school. It's not like the universities whereby students will have the opportunity or the luxury to rent outside and come to school for lectures, etc. It is based on the capacity of the school that enables them to take students in. So
then yeah, it appears you seem not to be abreast with some of the recent developments within the colleges of education, because since the implementation of the free senior high school policy, we've seen not just the colleges of education, the universities having an increment in terms of their enrollment rates because more graduates are being produced, and the colleges of education have not been spared of that increment, and that has resulted in some of the schools running double track to contain the increase in numbers. That is a fact.
No, and I keep telling you that it's got to do with the capacity of the school. The fact that we are producing more people from the secondary does not mean that everybody enters into this into the tertiary institution. It's got to do with your capacity, and it's an in out for the 3 years. Where before the introduction of the four-year group into the system. So that is where you need to see it from. You don't generalize it. College specific has got a certain character, which is quite different from our normal universities. So that was the point that I was making. So it's not as if I'm not abreast with the current trend. That has been the trend. That has been the trend.
Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yapoku Mensah is Deputy Spokesperson for the Education Ministry, has been helping us to appreciate some of the issues regarding the conversation about whether we should scrap or maintain the teacher trainee allowance. Elikem, you heard him if you want to take a bite before we move on to our next subject.
One I wanted to say before you even came in, that on this, why people go to training colleges, etc. I am a product of even the Polytechnic, which I'm always very proud of, and I understand that kind of perception that people hold about others just because if you're not from the known institutions of tertiary. But with regards to, I'm surprised at some of his submissions, and in the end, I mean, you called him to interview him as Deputy PRO for the Ministry of Education, and he ended up actually submitting on his personal opinions over things either he didn't know, etc. That is most unfortunate. But I think to still say that it was good that we give them the allowances, you are struggling as we speak, which is the reason why the challenge, we find ourselves in the quagmire we are, because if you had the money there, you would have given it long before ago. You wouldn't even be owing them 7 months allowances as we speak. So if you are not innovative and deep thinking enough and still think that you must maintain the status quo, I'm surprised, I'm shocked. Either it's just because maybe some people will laugh at us that we kicked against this and here we are now biting our own fingers. But that is just the reality. The government is constrained.
But also if you look at, before I bring in Fred, if you look at the numbers, when the policy was suspended in 2015, there was a reduction in the enrollment rate of the colleges, then teacher training colleges. Immediately when the policy was restored in 2017, there was an uptick, and now they are having students with single digits, aggregates, having interest in becoming teachers. And that goes a long way in helping to produce quality teachers that we've all been asking for. And that's on the good side.
Yes, but let's also put on record that it is not only having single digits or being brilliant students and going to the teacher training colleges that makes you come out as a good teacher. It is actually the training, the quality of training you receive from that institution, which is most important. Having been a good student is also an impetus anyways, but then the quality education you receive from the campus, which is why it matters so much for us, the quality of education being given to our students, the atmosphere within which they are studying, and the challenges that they are confronted with. Imagine a student who is supposed to be a teacher. For 7 months now has not been paid allowances. How is he learning? How is he able to even cope in the classroom, amongst other things? And so that is a major challenge. If you educate them very well that, look, you have gained tertiary status. One of the benefits of tertiary status, or one of the things you ought to do as a tertiary student, is that you will be migrated from wherever you are and to assess the student's loan. That is an established fact. And then they would over time adjust. Definitely nobody will be so comfortable with it because the allowance is more or less free. It's free, which you don't pay back. But the loan, you would have to pay back. But then in order to make room for more to also come in, it is actually the best way.
Fred, your final take on this issue?
I think Yao Poku-Mensah did a fantastic job. He, as the deputy PRO for the education ministry, he had a job to do to reassure us that government is still committed to the funding of the allowances. And that, for me, he did well on that, and the rest of his submissions. Again, let's not lost in the argument. The fact remains that do we continue to pay these allowances? That should be the fulcrum of our discussion. And I, Kofi Amia, is of the opinion that we need to have the discussion. The educationists, people in the education ecosystem, we must come together and agree, the civil society organization, as to whether it's important to continue paying these allowances. I know that the NDC government took a decision once and for all that we've cancelled it. And indeed, Elikem, just so you know, there was an attempt to reintroduce it, okay? And in fact, in the 2020 elections, the presidential candidate even also said that he will reintroduce it. So again, now, where is the stand of the NDC? You see this contradiction.
We want to take that answer from Elikem because I remember quite clearly former President Mahama said he would not cancel it.
Now you're saying that it's not necessary. So the NDC must be clear on that.
No, I think former president made clear that the allowances is not being cancelled. It is because there's another form of funding that you are assessing, and that is a student loan trust. That is a student loan that you are assessing. That is another
But
fund.
even before you left office, you attempted to reintroduce the allowance, not even the loan. The loan, you made the argument for it, and that warranted the cancellation of the allowances. We get it. But even at the time you were leaving, you attempted to reintroduce it.
That is why I'm telling you that the student's loan is the number one there for you. If, for instance, you can reconsider that, okay, maybe the allowances is not enough because they are actually supposed to be receiving feeding. They are supposed to be fed on campuses, which is also another matter of great proportion we need to look at another time, whether we should be feeding them or not. So if for the sake of the fact that we may have to even cancel feeding as well too, then could there be a certain percentage of another allowance that could be given them, which may not be up to the same magnitude of what they are receiving presently, but to kind of support the loan they are taking and help them with reference to.
But there's still a handout.
Yeah, that is still. But you see, government must take steps in order to cushion itself.
We are not answering the question.
I have just told you that
it's not true.
We are not restoring allowances.
What you are saying is not what the former president said. Let me quote what he said.
Quote what he said.
He said, you know, that was a very critical issue in the run-up to the 2016 elections. What I had said was we were going to migrate the health trainees and educational trainees to the student loan scheme. Now, what I have said going up to the 2020 election is that we are going to let the status quo remain. That's what he said.
We are going to let which status quo remain?
The status quo of paying the allowances. That's the status. Is it not the status quo?
Yes, if you want it to remain.
So you are saying something different from what the former president said. But you know, the crux of the issue is that this contradiction and the double standard nature of the NDC must stop.
No.
On one hand, in fact, indeed, You cancelled it. Now you are coming back to say you let the status quo remain.
But Mr. Mahama also said.
You see, okay,
Mr. Mahama also said.
And he went further to say, please, it means that we are going to continue paying trainee allowances.
Yes, he said that. So he said, Mr. Mahama says a potential NDC government in 2021 would allow the current allowance scheme for the trainees to run while they work to improve the loan scheme.
But why have you cancelled it?
When everyone is satisfied with that, we will migrate everyone onto the student loan scheme.
Now
Sonny,
can I come?
Yes. No, Elkin, please, with the greatest of respect.
Elkin, I'll give you this.
Okay. I am making the point that he cancelled it outright. Yes. He cancelled it. Now, why are you coming back to tell us, oh, okay, you let the status quo remain, and then review what? You see, I'm not like you. Otherwise, I would have used certain phrases. But I'm not like you. But I'm saying that
you said on this program that the allowance was cancelled in 2015 because of the IMF conditions. Did you say that on this program?
Yes, I did. Okay. As part of the why we should reduce government expenditure on the public, some of the public
to have some fiscal space.
Some space. Now I am saying that he went away. I mean, there were other avenues.
So that means it wasn't voluntary, right?
Well, it could have been. I mean, they will give you the choice to make where you should take and what you should do. And then they decided to go after the trainee allowances. The point remains that you cancelled it. And then you told us you reintroduce it. That's double standard. That's not fair. And that's the more reason why people have lost faith in politicians and they call us all sort of things. We must stop. I mean, the point has been made. Let's move on.
You've made your point.
Let me give clarity on this. I mean, the point is that you have restored the allowance. You expect that the moment President Mahama takes over from 7th January, he cancels it immediately?
But even with the E-levy, you said when you come now, you are going to cancel it. So why can't you do
I allowed you to talk.
No, I'm sorry.
Right? You expect that he comes into office and immediately he says that we cancel it without going through the process of even preparing the minds of the students that, look, we cancelled it before. The reasons we cancelled it were A, B, C, and D. This regime has restored it. We want to let you know that we may let it run for maybe a year, but after a year, we'll migrate you back onto the student loan scheme. That is exactly what he means. And how difficult is this for you to comprehend? That he told you. But that is what he even read it. That
he said when everyone is satisfied with that, we'll migrate everyone onto
we'll migrate everybody back onto that. So he said the status quo will remain. It must remain because you can't come to power and within the first year, you see, those are some of the things you did which is now biting you. Because you didn't really study how to even implement the free SHS. And you actually implemented it. Hold on. When President Mahama said in Takwa that there was need for you to consult stakeholders nationwide, you called him all manner of names. At a point now, you are saying yourself that you need to consult. Because you ought to have consulted. It was the reason why the president turned a stammerer on BBC when he was asked about the costing of the cost of the free SHS, and he said the costing. That is it.
But he has implemented it and it's working fine.
Very good. Oh, today it's working fine. Your own ambassadors are the very ones who say that no program is perfect, and you have even said so before. That the challenges we are confronted with, you have not even put up a single infrastructure that is supposed to actually take in this human capital.
Serious?
I am serious.
Some of the e-levy.
Can I respond?
No, some of the community structures, the community blocks that you started have been completed.
It's been completed. But
so if you say they haven't put up a single structure, we are seeing the model schools also
you see, you're not even mentioning the STEM. When did you just finish the STEM that you're talking about? After finishing even your first tenure of office, when the majority of the people suffered during your first tenure? Tell me how many blocks you actually even completed in your first tenure, in the first 4 years.
Sonny, can I please
so don't twist it to make it look like President Mahama is taking double sides, he's cancelled the allowances and he's saying he will maintain.
But that's what he said.
Yes, and that is why. Don't take it out of context. That more except was even read to you that he said that when it is studied carefully in the end, everybody will again be migrated.
When?
And that is because it takes a visionary leader to know that you don't just run into things and take stopgap measures where you will come and be suffering in the end.
Oh.
It is the reason why we look at the free SHS. Go to the schools and see how the number of students that are living in even our dormitories. Let's go and look at that.
But Fred,
President Mahama is saying that we will look at it carefully again. Then we'll have to migrate. So he has maintained his position that we will still migrate back onto the students' loan.
The GET fund, which kind of runs the students' loan scheme, is challenged
Not
now.
just the students.
Yes, I mean part of it. Yes, It's constrained now, and it's not able to offer the loan.
1.5 billion securitized, and it's been
for
capped.
this year, the student loan has not been in place because of the revenue constraints. And you think that we should not be looking at the proposal by Mr. Mahama, instead of giving handouts, to fix the problem with the revenue constraints, periodic revenue constraints on the side of Get Fund, then move everybody there and ensure that there is no burden of giving handouts?
First of all, the point needs to be made that, one, when you are a government and you are committed to a policy and you are voted into power, your first budget statement must reflect your policy direction. So the issue of, okay, when I come out, think about it, is neither here nor there. It has been established.
Is this cast in stone somewhere that we don't know?
Please, I'm making a point.
You say it's no, you're not comfortable. I'm interjecting you to when you were doing the same thing. Is it an uncomfortable situation? He did same and he was tolerated. So when he goes
I told him to hold on and allow you. You remember I told him that. Let's have a civil conversation.
For me, I also, at the beginning of this discussion, said there's no policy that is cast in stone. Okay, so if he one time cancelled it and now wants to, it's okay. But I'm saying that double standard should stop. They're moving forward.
So you introduce the
my friend here,
benchmark policy.
I'm coming. Please,
you review it. No, I'm asking you a question. No, it's tied to your response. Because we've seen policies under this government that were later reviewed.
15 U-turns.
So
mention them all.
I get it. Don't worry, I get it.
Is that double standard?
I get it. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. So again, the point is that my friend here makes the argument that, oh, you haven't put up any structure to absorb the free SHS. The free SHS is in shambles and blah, blah, blah. This is a program that has been successful for the last 5 years, and it's still ongoing. There's no government that has embarked on any educational infrastructure more than the Akufo-Addo government. Every secondary school institution has seen one infrastructure or the other, expansion for that matter. For example, why should I be concerned so much about putting up a new secondary school all over the country when I can expand the existing ones? And that's what we have done. Go to every single school in this country, secondary school in this country, whether you not find an expansion in dining halls and classrooms and dormitories in this country. That notwithstanding, even the E-levy blocks, the E-blocks that they embarked on, which was their policy, and they were able to finish about 25 or 26 or whatever.
29.
We have done even more than they started. So what are you talking about? Then with the issue of the Get Fund, what we decided to do is that, listen, for us to be waiting on government or the finance ministry when we receive the levy or the tax that goes into the Get Fund for infrastructure, educational infrastructure activities, why don't we securitize it, collateralize it, and then at the end of the day, we use the money, the bulk of the money we will get to embark on this infrastructure. And that's exactly what we have been able to do, and that is why at this point, we are almost done or exiting from this double track system. It's because of the massive infrastructure that have gone on in terms of our education. Then, you see, let me conclude on this issue and say that when it comes to making sure that there is a government that focuses on the human development of the ordinary Ghanaian, it is the New Patriotic Party, more especially under His Excellency Nana Addo.
I think you've given us...
So, for me, whatever the discussion is, it is clear that we consider the Ghanaian
talking
most
about the
in all our policies.
President Akufo-Addo being the best, that will usher us into final subject for discussion, the forecasts for election 2024 that we've been seeing in the last couple of weeks. The opposition National Democratic Congress is better placed to win the 2024 presidential elections, but only if it feels a candidate other than former President John Mahama. That's according to a forecast by the Economic Intelligence Unit. The EIU has accurately predicted Ghana's presidential elections over the years. Amidst the discussion of the EIU report, we were also seeing a new survey by the Global Info Analytics, which has also predicted victory for NDC's John Dramani Mahama. But there've been mixed reactions over this report. The MPP has admitted the credibility of the EIU, but says it is unlikely for NDC to field any other candidates other than Mr. Mahama, and that means if the election as communicated by the EIU will be based on economic policies. They have solid records compared to what Mr. Mahama left in office in 2017, and that will give them the edge over the NDC. Let's try to use the last 20 minutes of the show to look at some of the key things in these two predictions and how it may feature into the 2024 elections. Elikem, let me start with you. Happy that the EIU says you're winning, but you need to field a different candidate?
Thank you so much, Sonny. Did you take the pen to read the report?
Of course.
Because I don't find anywhere in that report where it indicated that President Mahama, NDC was going to win the election.
They said NDC has better chances if it presents a different candidate.
Where is that indicated?
I'll give you the portion.
I'm stating
yes.
here on record.
Yes,
nowhere in that report.
I'll get you that portion.
You have spin doctors who are scared at the mere mention of President Mahama, whose performance, even after losing 2016, has actually demonstrated in 2020 that he's still as relevant as any other person because the number of votes he garnered in 2020 were far more than even in 2016 and better than the candidate he went against us. So if you are looking at this, I must also say on record that the NDC in particular pays better attention to research. It is very well welcomed because we live in a scientific world now where garbage in is garbage out. We will not rule out the findings of any institution. We will take it and work on it. But the fact is that it is nothing new to the NDC. We know for a matter of fact that President Nana Addo, for instance, is seeking a third term through Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, who is creating so much chaos because he has actually established himself as not credible. The fact must remain. Compared to their own candidates, he and Alan Tremartin, who has comported himself as a more decent politician, compared to a vice president who was made a senior presidential staffer and went on rampage, telling all manner of lies that I can outline them if you allow me the latitude of time, and is now coming back to bite him. And the famous one amongst all is that if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. Today, he's also become a sudden stammerer like the president was when he was a candidate at a point in time, and all of this. So, in fact, what happens in the MPP is none of our business at all. Our main focus is the Ghanaian voter. It's President Mahama, is the NDC. And so we are having our own internal assessment and are very convinced about where we are heading to. I have even heard other people also say that it should be someone else, it should not be the running mate. Someone even say we should look at 2034 and all manner of things. Suddenly they themselves will wake up to the smell of
so
the
you ask for,
yes,
for the portion where the report said the NDC should consider a different candidate. If we go to page 6 of the report where it has been themed election watch, it says the next parliamentary and presidential elections are due in 2024. Under constitutionally mandated term limits, the incumbent President Akufo-Addo cannot run for a third term. The former President John Mahama is reportedly considering running again, but we expect the NDC to try to revitalize its prospects with a fresh candidate.
You see, they are saying that we expect that we revitalize. So by their view, they think that we are not revitalized. And I'm telling you.
And when you are not revitalized, what does it mean?
And I'm already even telling you that even the statistics from President Mahama's performance in the last election was far better than even 2016. Than his performance even in 2016. So it only tells that actually no research is actually 100% street proof anyways, because it also tells that they may also have flaws. But it is not saying that we need to change President Mahama at all costs. It is only saying that if the NDC needs to revitalize. And you see, we do not need that kind of revitalization that they are even talking of, because the drive has been there already. We are not even complacent that, look, the regime currently we are witnessing has established corruption as an endemic institution. But then we would continually actually preach what we will do. It is established and known fact by many that the People's Manifesto remains the greatest manifesto ever by a political party.
Well. Do you agree with the prediction, and based on the credibility of the EIU, it has successfully predicted accurately Ghana's election over the years?
Let me also state...
I'm coming. Yes. Do you agree with the projection that NDC is better placed to win 2024 elections?
Two things I want to say in answering that.
Okay.
we do not need the EIU to do such predictions because some of them think that we are myopic enough. The reason being that normally in most political terrains in Africa and even globally, political parties take 2 tenures. And so usually everybody has a certain thinking that after your second tenure, you automatically, people are fed up with you. And that is why the incumbent always loses some votes amongst other things. But we are not only focused on that. It's the reason why I'm saying that they having that prediction is nothing out of the ordinary. It is very normal for them to actually say so. And if you look at most of the things they said, it is not something that we do not even know ourselves. We have been saying a lot of these things long before ago. That, for instance, the MPP made lofty promises, for instance, that 1 district, 1 factory, with a graph promising Ghanaians watching you and I that in each district you have this factory there, that suddenly they are now calling existing factories as far back as 1985 as part of the factories that they have set up. So the deceit is what Ghanaians are watching.
We've seen some personalities springing up in the NDC wanting to lead the party into the 2024 elections. Is it that the party setting is coming with former President Mahama when the likes of Benjamin Kwabena Duffuor, former finance minister, former governor, Bank of Ghana, have also declared interest in running on the ticket of the party?
The NDC believes in democracy more than any other. If you recall, in the NPP's primaries, for instance, there were some parliamentary seats that were declared, that they declared that people didn't have to contest them.
Who did that?
Oh, you know.
No, who did that?
But who does? I mentioned NPP, and you expect the NDC to be the one to do it for you?
Which individual?
Who is in charge of your political your campaign? So you recall the Bantama man who also, and how do you call it? Where these other guys, there were about 4 or 5 places that they were declared not to be challenged. Then this is known fact. If you are unaware, maybe you were on a UN mission at the time, so you are not aware.
But the fact is what happens in the party.
Well, maybe
nothing of that nature happens.
Sonny, am I right or wrong? I'm sure you are.
Of course, on both sides of the political divide, we saw certain seats being protected.
But
for example,
you said we declared. That's not true.
That may not have been the official position of the party, but in real essence, that's what happened.
But that's not
so
true.
whether it has been communicated or not, in the NDC we saw some candidates were suspended ahead of the primaries. In Aswati, for example, the contender to Muntaka was suspended on some reasons, and Muntaka went.
No, in their case, elections were not held at all.
He's creating the impression that the party declared those seats uncontested, and I'm saying. On facts, that is not true.
Was an election held in Chairman Bonsu's constituency?
The fact that he went unopposed doesn't mean the party declared that he
went unopposed.
No, I'm coming. Who allowed that?
Yes,
it's the process. For example, if you go for vetting and you went for vetting at some point and you were what? You were declared not fit enough to contest.
I was disqualified.
Disqualified. There were people who expressed interest to contest and they were disqualified. For that matter, he was the only person who qualified at the point. Does it mean the party has declared?
Really?
Yes,
he was the only person who qualified.
Tell me where the party stated. Tell me where the party stated.
So that's your position.
That's the reality.
Well, your grassroots are
we do not have much time
with this kind of conduct.
We have 15 minutes.
But all I'm trying to put across is that the NDC believes in democracy, and that is the fact that whether it is Kwabena Duffuor, President Mahama, everybody knows. If you're a basic student of marketing, you know that the best brand in the NDC still remains.
Who is your sure bet? Who are you?
That is what I'm telling you. From a very pure brand and marketing perspective.
Is it
President Mahama is still he's still the front runner, and other people are equally free to also contest the same elections.
You are a loud voice in the NDC.
Yes.
Who are you going for?
I cannot shy away from the fact that President Mahama is the most suitable candidate.
Is your candidate?
That's what I'm saying. I can't shy away from that. And he is my candidate that obviously he will be the front runner. And so anybody coming to contest him is also free to do so because that is the definition of democracy.
Fair enough. Fred, let me bring you in. I read a statement signed by Bobina Samoa which welcomed the projection by the EIU, but said if the election will be based on economic performance, as indicated in the reports, the MPP is better
placed, yes,
and will win the election if that's the yardstick. And I was wondering, when a prediction says you will lose the election and you find a rope in there to hold and say
Well, on this note, let me say a very good afternoon to Stephen Ayesu in team. And let me come to the issues. First and foremost, you see, this bottom-up approach explanation by Elikem is a bit uncomfortable, I understand, because the only candidate they have for now is His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. And unfortunately, Ghanaians have rejected him and they do not want him back because we know what he's capable of doing, and we do not find his policies fit enough to lead us once again. That point is extremely made clear by the good people of this country. And unfortunately, they did not put up a structure or a system to be able to replace His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. So
what do you mean
they
by
are
that?
not in a comfortable...
What do you mean they haven't put in a place to...
Oh, he's a politician. You are not a politician.
You're not speaking to him alone. If you are in a private conversation with him,
as
you
a
can
political party, sometimes you must make deliberate effort for successions. You know, sometimes you must groom people, you must groom individuals, you must bring them to the front
we've seen
to ensure that
Joshua Alabi, we've seen Kobina Dufour.
But he is sitting here. I know who Elikem is. We've been engaging for the last 5 years. And if Elikem is throwing his support behind John Dramani Mahama, it's a reflection that that's what the party wants. And I've heard the communication director in public on TV3 saying that they will go with His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. So the names we have mentioned, they won't win. You and I know that they won't win.
No, that's your perception.
Okay.
Because they are going into a contest and everything is possible.
They are grooming me. Just
okay.
Anyway, that's on the lighter note. We in the MPP support the report. And we also support all reports from any reputable and credible institution for that matter. Yes, the EIU report suggests that when elections are held 2024, will be held in 2024, the NDC stands a better chance of winning the elections. They didn't end there. They went by saying that it's driven by anti-incumbency factors and public disaffection with the current government. However, irrespective of who retains power, we expect policy continuity in the medium term with a focus on improving food security. Then it goes further to say that public discontent with the government stems from factors such as rising prices, stoked by the Russian-Ukraine war, unfavorable public sector working conditions, limited economic opportunities for the young people. So these are exacerbated by socioeconomic fallout from the coronavirus. So these are the factors and the reasons.
And it also says the factors includes easing of corruption. The reports indicate that it hasn't been indicated.
And the report has
which has
made
no bearing with Ukraine and the COVID-19.
I understand. There are, even the incumbency, factors are not part of the Ukraine. No, it's just a factor. I'm not going to base my argument on the Ukraine coronavirus thing. But the truth of the matter is that it's tried knowledge that after 8 years, there's a likelihood for any political party that have stayed on to power for 8 years to leave for another political party to come on board. And on this note, I want to take the opportunity to throw in a humble advice. You don't
have much time.
I know, but it's important to me. As Ghanaians and as people who determine who leads this country and determine the destiny of this country, we should be concerned with the track record of a political party rather than the period of time they stayed on to power. If their policies and their programs find favor with you, I believe it doesn't matter if they even stay for 40 years. Give them the opportunity to lead us. The fact that they've stayed on to 8 years, regardless of how good their policies are, regardless of how constructive their programs and the enactment of their laws, ensure that at the end of the day we will develop all these considerations and factors will be staring in your face, and because they've spent 8 years, you just want to let them go. I respectfully and humbly submit that we should move away from.
You're advocating for the breaking the 8 mantra, right?
Oh, of course, of course. It's important that we, the MPP, breaks the 8 because we have the wherewithal and the competence to ensure that at the end of the day, when we find ourselves in challenges, which include the coronavirus and the Russian and any other economic challenges that might be before us, we have what it takes to ensure that at the end of the day, when we promise the good people of this country that we have what it takes to bring the economy back to life. Now look at where we were, 2020. Now we were about to talk about 5.4 growth. Even in these excruciating times, we are better than what the NDC left in 2016 when there wasn't any coronavirus or even Russia-Ukraine war. So I am making the point, not as a matter of semantics or rhetorics, but as a matter of fact, that it would take the NPP, the New Patriotic Party, to ensure that this country find itself in glorious paths again. Again, we cannot do this without making sure we mobilize, energize, and galvanize the base of the party, which is the rank and file and the grassroots. And I believe moving forward, now that we are in the process of electing our new executive, we are done with the polling station, electoral area. Next week, we go into the constituency, then the region and the national. It will require a new chairman with a new energy.
So you have ushered us into
and I believe that individual will be Stephen Ayesu's team. Yeah. When he leaves the party, the possibility of breaking the 8 is extremely high.
So you don't support Freddie Blay?
Oh, he's not coming anymore.
Okay, so my quick question,
I support Stephen Ayesu's team.
Okay, I'll come
and
with
for him.
Okay,
and I work for him.
That's good. That's good. But my question then is the global info analytics is of the view that Alan Tremantin is better placed in terms of winning the primaries compared to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, who is the vice president. And I was wondering,
what was the basis? Has anybody expressed an intent to run for the primaries? Any of these individuals?
No.
Or they just did an analysis?
So you mean?
No, I mean
no.
I mean,
let's not downplay the intelligence of our viewers. They haven't formally communicated that they are running, but you and I know.
I did so with so much respect for them because not until they make their intentions known, the report or the survey, for me, it should be found wanting because it's when they make the intention known. That's
so
when some dynamics.
It's a forecast that if Dr. Bawumia, Dr. Bawumia decides to run on the ticket,
I won't say
when we have already heard from the finance minister, when Dr. Bawumia addressed the nation on the economy at Kaswa, he said, looking at the performance of the vice president in delivering, as far as the economy is concerned, Nana Akufo-Addo has a better successor, even when he leaves. The party has somebody to lead.
First of all, let me be clear that I am not in any way, throwing a huge support for Dr. Bawumia. But I'm also suggesting that, or making the point that it's too soon to be coming out with such report because the moment he makes his intentions known to the people, the dynamics will change.
Okay, so my question to you then is that
now as a party person, as a grassroots person, any of them that will come and win the primaries and lead the MPP, I will fully
the chairmanship. The chairmanship is a crucial position in the bid to win the 2024 elections. You have stated who you will support.
Yes.
And I'm asking if today, if Dr. Bawumia and Mr. Tremantin decide to run for the flag bearership, who would you be voting for? Who would you be supporting like you've just declared your support?
First of all, I won't be a delegate. I won't vote for any of them. So any one of them that the party will decide, the delegates will decide to vote for, I will support that individual.
So you don't have.
I am more concerned with the chairmanship, and so I am supporting.
Who do you think? Looking at the records of both of them, they have worked in their respective positions. Who do you think, when the party gives the nod to lead, will likely help the party to break the 8?
I am of the opinion that for us to be able to break the 8, the rank and file of the party needs to be energized, and it will take the national chairman to do so. That is why I believe so much in Stephen Ayesu's team to do that.
Are you laughing? I thought you were asking me to stop the semantics.
When the party make that decision, when we are done with all these processes.
Sonny, you didn't do well for him.
Okay, the delegates will decide, and when they do decide, both of them have a rich track record of managing the economy, and any of them that the party will decide.
I've seen on social media some of the people within the camp of Dr. Bawumia advocating massively on social media campaign that he's the best bet to break the 8 for the MPP. I've also seen from the camp of Mr. Tremartin also on social media. Some of them have even started to trade insult and stuff. Unfortunately. And I was wondering, it means, it appears they are the runners, the two runners. So you've just admitted they are the two runners.
Oh, I mean, I'm just supporting the argument you're advancing.
Okay.
That's what you are saying.
I thought you made a submission saying that, I know
he's
politics
saying, I'm
and
supporting, we are having a discussion.
Look, you're running away from...
Sani,
let me came to tell you...
And he went ahead to say,
yes,
and also make, you want me to take side?
No, I'm not asking you to take off.
From what you just said that I gave credence to, when you look at the track record of these two individuals that have been mentioned, from the management of the economy and industrializing this, economy, they've both done a fantastic job. Right from 3.4% of GDP growth, and when you look at 2017, 18, 19, the expansion of the GDP growth, when Dr. Bawumia, of course, he is the leader of the economic management team, all the successes that we have chalked in this, wow. But for the COVID and all, even after COVID,
so being the leader of the economic management team,
look at the recovery.
Should he be allowed to lead the party? Well, we don't have much time. You have less than a second to live.
Looking at the recovery. Now, when you look at the massive industrialization agenda and drive going on in this country, to the extent that we have 5 major automobiles establishing their assembly plants in Ghana. And that is the massive work of Alan Tremartin. So with these two individuals, I am more convinced that finally when delegates chooses whoever should come, I will gladly support
So Fred has no say in it. He has no candidate for now.
I am more interested in who becomes the chairman. And I'm extremely optimistic that Stephen Ayesu...
I'll give Elikem the last bite.
You see, when you take Dr. Kwabena Dufo and former President Rawlings, I know for a fact that Dr. Kwabena can equally do a very fantastic job. But I just told you plainly that I believe that President Mahama is my favorite candidate. This is what has given him almost 10 minutes of talk time that he couldn't. You see, when you look at 2014, Russia invaded Ukraine under President Mahama. We didn't have to complain about that.
The dynamics were different. It didn't impact global economy.
The three major things that are affecting us is mismanagement, which actually the World Bank has also just indicated that poor public financial management and huge debt is to blame for Ghana's economic woes. So the mismanagement, corruption, and the currency which has become worthless. So let us not be blaming Russia. And that is why the government has actually asked us to stop blaming them for whatever economic mess we find ourselves in.
Thank you. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It has been a fruitful conversation. My name is Sani Abdurrahman. Join us same time next week as we come your way with the major headlines in the papers. Until then, enjoy the rest of our programs.
You see,